The views and opinions expressed on our podcast by us or by any guest are those of our own and of our guests. They do not reflect the views, opinions, or approval of any Grand Lodge of Freemasonry or any lodge of any jurisdiction. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Masonic Ring Podcast. We have been on a bit of a hiatus here, mainly because I was moving, and so everything had to be packed up, everything had to be moved, and as anyone knows who's ever moved, it is stressful enough without trying to record a podcast. But we are back, and we are in our new studio, which is working out pretty good, I think. Got some new lighting, got some a little bit better room, so we're doing pretty good. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about the Masonic Funeral, and one of the main reasons is in our lodge yesterday, we had a Masonic funeral for a longtime member. He was just shy of 70 years in the lodge. He was he was one of those, like kind of part of the furniture brothers. He was always there. As far as I know, he didn't go through any of the offices or the chairs or anything like that, but he was always there. He was, you know, he was there for just about everything. One thing I found out about him, he was also a war hero in the Korean War. He was a POW and was able to escape that. And for the longest time, he did serve as marshal. He said he always loved to carry the flag and present it at the altar, and I think that was I always thought that was pretty awesome. Before we get into the meat of the episode, though, for those of you who are listening and not on Facebook, we stream our episodes live on Facebook. Just go on there, search up the Masonic Ring Podcast, and you should find us. You can also go on YouTube and watch past episodes. Search up the Masonic Ring Podcast, and You can search up past live streams that I record and post on there. You can go to our website, the Masonic Ring, .com, theMasonicRing.com. And of course, you can email us, theMasonicRing@gmail.com. So now that we've got all of our shameless plugs out of the way, I want to talk about the Masonic Funeral and why it's one of the most distinguished honors that you can bestow on a Freemason. And it's also one of the greatest, most sincere things that we do as Freemasons is the Masonic Funeral. It is a very sacred, it's a very sacred act. It's one of those things that you don't really quite know what it's about until you sit through it, and it's open to the public. There's nothing secret about the Masonic Funeral. It's my very first experience with a Masonic funeral was when I was 10 years old, and my grandfather passed away. And I've just got some bits and pieces into my mind of how that went, and I didn't quite fully understand it until I became a Master Mason and sat through um, an actual Masonic funeral for the first time and was a part of it as a brother. That it hit home to me. It was like really one of those things that you really have to see it to fully understand it and listen to it. So we're going to talk about that, but I am going to post a poll for those of you um, that are watching on Facebook. Do you, the poll says, do you want a Masonic funeral when you pass away? There are some brothers that choose not to. Um, they, I can think back recently, my mentor in Freemasonry recently passed away, and they did not have a Masonic funeral for him. And one of the reasons was he said that it would be too hard on the brethren. He did not want to put that burden on the brothers. And I wish I could have told him that, told him and said, listen, this is an honor for us to be able to do that for you. This will not be a burden. But, that's the way he thought. He did not, it's an honorable thing. It's a sacred thing, but he was thinking about his brothers even after his passing and not of himself. And that's the true epitome of a Master Mason, of a true brother. And as for me, I can fully understand, but I really would like to have a Masonic funeral when I pass away. Okay, so let's get into this episode. Sorry, I had to get me something to drink. So every jurisdiction is going to be different. What I have here is, I don't think it's actually completely up to date. I am not 100% on a couple things, and I'll tell you as I go through them of what I am not fully knowledgeable on. But a Masonic burial or a Masonic funeral, and you can have both. You can choose to have the lodge, the brethren, do your entire funeral from start to finish. Most times, all the ones that I have been a part of has been a separate funeral just for the Masonic service, but then there was an actual funeral and burial apart from the lodge. Now, you can choose to have the Masons, the lodge, do your entire funeral from start to finish. And they'll do the funeral, they'll do the commitment to the ground, they'll do all of that. I've not yet been a part of that, although I think that does sound pretty intriguing. My own opinion, myself, I would like to have a separate Masonic funeral and then have one, apart from that. That's the way my grandpa did it. And so I think that would be just my opinion, but so basically, every Master Mason who, at the time of his death, is a member in good standing, shall be entitled to a Masonic burial and funeral. It shall be the duty of the lodge to bury any such deceased member, um, who shall have so requested, or in whose behalf such request shall have been made by the person or the persons standing in the nearest relation to him. So, the widow calls, or one of the children, we would like to have a Masonic funeral for our dad. Um, that brings up another point too, because a lot of times, for whatever reason, a brother who has been in good standing, with the lodge for, say, 50, 60 years, he has not been to any meetings for a long time. He passes away. We, as the brethren, as in the lodge, we may not know that. Um, the only way we would know is by seeing it in the newspaper, hearing it on the radio or on Facebook or whatever the case may be, but we may miss that. And so we would have to have some communication from the family saying, you know, so and so passed away and he would like to have a Masonic funeral. And then we start the steps from there. So um, if you're listening out there and you're a brother that wants a Masonic funeral, please make sure you tell your family, write it down somewhere, to let them know to contact the lodge of which you are a member. Um, if you haven't been, especially if you haven't been to a service, if you have not been to a meeting, for a while, and if you're a brother in good standing, you are a brother, and you are entitled, not just entitled, it is your solemn right to have a Masonic funeral. Um, and if that's what you want, please make sure that your family, knows that, so that we can be contacted, or I say we, as in the lodge, can be contacted to make sure that you get that right that is rightfully yours. Um, in the absence of any such request, Masonic burial may be granted or withheld as the master of the lodge considers best. So, if we do find out that a brother has passed away, but we have not received a communication from the family, we can reach out to the family and say, your husband, your father, was a member in good standing of this lodge. Would you like a Masonic funeral for him? And they have the option of saying yes or no. But that's only if we know. That's only if we know. And like I said, if we don't know that the brother has passed away, I mean, you look at the lodge that I'm a member of, we have I want to say almost 400 members. It's maybe less than that. It's 335 or 345. And not all of them show up to the lodge. And so we have to have that communication. Also, a lodge is under no obligation to pay for the burial unless that has been brought up in the lodge, voted on by the brethren, um, and that can only happen if the master says, this is, we've got so and so brother, he's passed away, his family is hurting for money, they want a Masonic burial, would you like to pay for it? And the rest, how a stated meeting goes, or how that goes. But and another thing, a Masonic funeral cannot be denied because of any kind of mental illness, suicide, or any other kind of illness. And I'm speaking for the jurisdiction that I'm a member of. Your jurisdiction may be different. So that's something that you would have to talk to with the master of your lodge, the secretary, or even the grand secretary of your state. But, you know, there kind of is a negative connotation when you're talking about suicide. For some reason, when somebody dies of suicide, it's looked upon more negatively towards that person than, say, if they were to die of a heart attack. But the fact of the matter is, they were a brother, a master mason in good standing. They, for whatever reason, did what they did, and they are still afforded that right as a Mason, as a member in good standing, to a Masonic funeral. And I'm going to sound like a broken record because it all depends on your jurisdiction. Other jurisdictions, other Grand Lodges may have other rules. So don't take everything I'm saying to heart, because every jurisdiction has different guidelines. So when a lodge is requested, the family sends a request to the lodge. They call the lodge. They, however they need to do it, they get a hold of the lodge to have a Masonic funeral for a brother. The master, now this is how it normally goes. The master will summon the lodge. Say, we are having a Masonic funeral for brother Smith. This is the way it's supposed to work. Is the master will summon the lodge, will summon the members to the lodge. They will open the lodge, and then they will go from there to the funeral home or wherever the funeral is being held. And then after the funeral, you go back to the lodge and close the lodge, and then it is then the duty of the secretary to record in the minutes of that meeting, which would be a special meeting, to make a due record, or the minutes of why the lodge was open, what we did with the funeral, and then when we closed the lodge. That's the way, unless it has been changed, that's the way it's normally done. Now, I don't know, a lot of times that's just not plausible. Sometimes you get really, really short notice, and all you can do is get the word out to as many brothers as you can, and we meet to the funeral home. But there should still be some sort of record made in the minutes of the lodge for that month or whatever. The master or another such officer as he may appoint, or a past master of the lodge, may proceed with the brethren to the place where the funeral service is being held. And you're basically going to open the lodge as a special meeting or emergent meeting. And if found necessary, a Masonic funeral service may be held on Sunday, which the funeral that I just attended was, today is Monday the 17th. Yesterday was Sunday the 16th. And that was when we had to do it. So a lot of times, funerals aren't held on Sundays. You've got church, you've got a lot of different reasons why it's not held on Sundays. However, if found necessary, a Masonic funeral service can be held on Sunday. Now, this one right here is what I am not 100% sure on as far as my jurisdiction. One of the guidelines were that no brother can be interred with the formalities of the order unless he has received the 3rd degree in Freemasonry in the Blue Lodge. If I am not mistaken, I believe that has been changed, because I believe that we have actually, I remember it was probably 14 years ago. It was not long after I was raised to the 3rd degree that we had put through an entered apprentice. And we put him and his brother through, And before he could move on to, no, it was after we put him through the fellowcraft. And before he could move on through the Master Mason, he was killed in a four-wheeler accident. And I believe we had, and it's like I said, this is 14 years ago, we had a Masonic funeral for him as a fellowcraft, not as a Master Mason. Um, unless I am mistaken, he never did receive the third degree. And I may be wrong about that, but I don't think so. I really don't. I think unless something has changed, I believe we did that. The master of the lodge, after being notified of the death of the brother and of his request or the request of his near relatives that he be buried with Masonic ceremonies, shall have all suitable arrangements made to that effect. Now, suitable arrangements are one thing. Obviously, you're going to contact the members of the lodge. Um, you know, that is priority number one. We need to get the information out there as soon as possible. Normally, the secretary, now in our lodge, we have funeral aprons. They are aprons with a black outline around them, and then the officers have their aprons with the jewel of their office on the apron, but it's also outlined in black. And we also have armbands that are black with a grayish, silverish looking square and compasses with the letter G that we put around our arm. Let's see. In the case of a brother, let me see here. Oh no, I am way ahead. If two or more lodges attend, the ceremonies will be conducted by the lodge of which the deceased was a member. In the case of a stranger, the master of the senior lodge present shall preside. When my uncle, he passed away several years ago. This has been probably 10 or 12 years ago. He passed away, and he was actually a dual member. He was a member of our lodge, and he was a member of another lodge nearby, and he paid dues for both. And so the question was, when he passed away, which lodge is going to take precedent over the Masonic funeral? Well, you can be a dual member, but you have a home lodge. And that home lodge is normally the one that you were raised in, unless you have demitted to another lodge. So it wasn't our lodge that did the Masonic funeral. It was the other lodge, because he moved his primary membership from ours to that other lodge. And even though he was a member of both, that was technically his home lodge. So I hope that makes sense. I just kind of went through a whole bunch of stuff. All the brethren that walk in processions should observe, as much as possible, a unit of formality and a uniformity of dress, a proper badge of mourning around the left arm. Normally, you can wear white gloves. I haven't seen that for a long time, and of course, your aprons are definitely required. It is recommended to avoid all ostentatious displays of Masonic costume. And what I think with that is, I wore a few of my lapel pins, but I think if you have lapel pins that are just going from the top of your lapel all the way down, and you've got, these flashy, you put on a flashy Scottish Rite medal and you've got this and that, and you're basically making it all about you. That is an ostentatious display of Masonic costume. Um, Also, normally, depending on your jurisdiction, when you are in the funeral procession, and when each brother goes up to the casket, and we go one by one, and again, don't there's no need to call the Grand Lodge on me, because nothing that I'm telling you is secret. There is no secret about this. A Masonic funeral is open to the public. But normally, when a brother has passed away, each brother that attends the funeral will be able to pay his last respects to that brother. And it's a one by one kind of procession. So every brother will stand up, and each brother will be able to approach the casket, and each brother will be able to lay greenery in the casket for the brother. And that's kind of like a one on one, brother to brother goodbye. Um, there's also, and we're going to get into it here in a little bit. There's another reason why we do it, but and when you're walking up, you're going to want to go and you're going to want to square your corners, because the square is one of the working tools. And so the square, you want to square your corners. You want to make it as uniform as possible. So when you're walking up, you square off, you walk towards the casket. You lay your greenery. Instead, don't turn right away. Take a step back and then square again, and then go off and let the other brother behind you move up. So, I think it not only is, I think, respectful, but it just makes it look and feel more symbolic and more sacred when each brother that walks up to the casket, they square their corners, they pay their respects, they take one step back, square again. And to me, is that's one of the things that gets me um, in a Masonic funeral is the uniformity, the respect, and squaring of the corners, and everything there that just goes. And it seems to go, not everything is going to go perfect. There's always going to be something that happens. It's called being human. But none of, we're not going to do a perfect job. But when you see the brothers squaring off, approaching our deceased brother, paying our respects, and we're doing it in a uniform kind of way, and man, it gives me chill bumps. So there are so many different ways that we can do the Masonic service. Um, there's different, there's different rituals. There's different prayer. There's different ways that you can do it. Our jurisdiction offers us different ways of doing it. Um, but there was one thing that I wanted to read that um, that this is what gets me, and it has to do with the apron, because the apron is the first gift that you receive as a brother, and the apron is it is the badge of a Mason. And the apron has its symbolic roots and it has its history. But when you are initiated as an entered apprentice, you receive your apron, and it is a gift to you, and it's yours to wear throughout an honorable life. And when you die, your apron is then deposited with your body. So that first gift that you received as a Mason, as a brother, is then with you, is then with your remains beneath the earth. And so I have here it is right here. I have a thing I wanted to read. And like I said, this is fully on board. I'm not violating any obligation because this is open to the public. But it reads like this: the lamb's skin or white apron is an emblem of innocence and the badge of a Mason. It is more ancient than the golden fleece or Roman eagle, more honorable than the star and garter. This emblem I now deposit with the body of our deceased brother. We are thus reminded of the universal domination of death. The arm of friendship cannot interpose to prevent his coming. The wealth of the world cannot purchase our release, nor will the innocence of youth, nor the charms of beauty, propitiate his purpose. The mattock, the coffin, and the grave admonish us of our mortality, and that sooner or later these frail, weak bodies must molder in their parent dust. I think to me that gets me every time. And the brother who did the funeral yesterday, he was he's senior warden, so the master chose to let him do the service, and then the master was the acting chaplain, but he did a tremendous job. And when he read that, and that's, I mean, it was, your mind goes back to when you received your apron. When you received your apron, you have a promise when you receive the apron as a brother that this apron's yours. And at your death, it is to be deposited with your remains. And that promise was fulfilled last night. That to me, man, it gets me every time. It gives me chill bumps. And you know, it like I said, this brother was almost just shy of 70 years as a Mason. And 70 years later, that promise was fulfilled. From the time he received his apron to the time that he was, to the time he put it on for the last time, and that apron was deposited with him. Over 70 years, that promise still holds true. That right there is one of the things that makes it so sacred, so just so honorable to be a part of and to do for your fellow Freemason. It really is amazing. We also deposit greenery in with the deceased brother. And the greenery is an emblem of our faith in the immortality. Well, let me just read it. The evergreen is an emblem of our faith in the immortality of the soul. By this, we are reminded of our high and glorious destiny beyond the world of shadows, and that there dwells within our tabernacle of clay an imperishable, immortal spirit over which the grave has no dominion and death has no power. That gets me too every time. It's, you know, we deposit the greenery in with the brother as a symbol of our faith in the immortality of the soul. Our bodies will wither, our bodies will perish, but our souls are immortal. Our souls are immortal. And this is a symbol of that. The greenery is a symbol of the immortality of our souls. And everything that we do has a reference to going to heaven. I mean, it's basically saying your body will wither, your body will die, your body will perish from this earth, but your soul will live forever. So much so that I am the resurrection, the life, saith the Lord. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live, and whosoever liveth, believeth in me, shall never die. That is just one of the versions that we have the option of to be able to do for a brother that has passed away. And this here, I have this highlighted as well because it is very important to acknowledge the family. A lot of family members, even the adult males are not members of the lodge, and they have just chosen not to be a part of it. But it is very important to recognize the family of our brother. And with that, we have with the friends and relatives who are deeply stricken at the loss which we have all sustained, we sincerely and most affectionately sympathize. We dare to say that he who tempers the wind to the shorn lamb looks down with infinite compassion upon the widow and the fatherless in their hour of desolation, and will fold the arms of his love and protection around those who put their trust and confidence in him. That's very self-explanatory. To the friends and relatives, we most heartily sympathize, and we know that God will take you in his embrace and comfort you and protect you in this time of grief. I think that is very important that if you ever have the chance, if you have not yet been a part of a Masonic funeral, and even if you are not a Mason, if you have a relative, a friend, an acquaintance that is a Mason and they are having a Masonic funeral, go to it. It is not secret. It is one of the most sacred things that we do, and it's open to the public. And I think it's very important to be a part of that. And you can watch that and see it and experience it for yourself. And it may even spark an interest saying, wow, this was amazing. Maybe I should be a Mason. And I think it's something that I definitely want when I pass away. This is another version that, and this will be probably the last thing I read, but this talks about the frailty of life, of human life. And it reads, man that is born of woman is of few days and full of trouble. He cometh forth like a flower and is cut down. He fleeth also as a shadow and continueth not. In the midst of life we are in death. Of whom then may we seek but of thee, O Lord, who for our sins are justly displeased? Where is the man that liveth, that shall not see death? Man walketh in vain shadow, he heapeth up riches, and cannot tell who gather them. Basically saying no man is going to escape death. It is going to come for us all. And it's just another reason as Freemasons that we want to try to live a just and upright life. And that our actions are good and decent, and that we treat people with respect, not just other Masons, everyone. That we try to comfort those, especially our brothers, who are in need, who are depressed, who may have gone through a job loss or um or a divorce or a death in their family. It is up to us to be there for them as brothers. We don't have to impose on their life, but what we can do is reach out and say, "Listen, I'm there for you. If you need to talk, if you just want somebody to listen, I'm there." I think the funeral service that we put on for a brother is the least we can do, especially for a brother that we just did one for yesterday who has been a part of the lodge for almost 70 years, and it's almost unheard of nowadays. Um, some other procedural things you can do. I know in our jurisdiction, you can do the Solomon. Excuse me, I don't know what that was. You can do the Solomon's chime, the hymn. Um, I don't think I've been to one in a while where we've actually done that because um, most of the brothers can't sing, and it kind of takes away from it more than what it adds to it. Um, Let me see here if there's anything else I want to bring up. I mean, there's another thing that popped into my head. There's scripture that you can read, and there's so much scripture, and I think I would say most jurisdictions allow you to throw in this scripture or that scripture, or maybe it's something, or maybe you do without the scripture from the King James Bible, and because the brother was not of that faith or whatever the case may be. In most all funerals that I've been to, I would almost imagine all of them has always had Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. For thou art with me. Thy rod, thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever." I don't think I've ever been to a funeral where that has not been recited. And it's perfect. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. I mean, how great is that? It's just, you can't get any better than that. Okay, so we have went through basically the procedure of, from the point the lodge is notified to the day that we know the funeral is going to be, when the family has requested it, and we have said, okay, we'll be there. We've gone through the funeral. The master and the chaplain have performed the funeral. The brothers have paid their last respects. What happens after that? Well, essentially, after that happens, the brothers then meet back at the lodge, and the lodge is closed. And then a recording of the minutes or a recording of the funeral is then put up in the records of the lodge. So then what happens after that? After the brother has been, the Masonic funeral, the regular funeral, he has been buried, what happens after that? And to me, I think going to it's all going to be subjective on your jurisdiction, or maybe even your Blue Lodge that is putting it on at the time. There are different things that you can do. I know in our jurisdiction, I think I have it here. Let me see. Sorry about that. It is called a Free and Accepted Masons in Memoriam, where you can print out a certificate that is signed by the master saying that, I'll just go ahead and read it because this is important as well, and it's important for the family. It may be something that they can, frame and put um, with his effects. It says, whereas it is pleased by our Heavenly Father in his infinite wisdom to remove from amongst us our esteemed brother and fellow member, and then that right there is where you would put the brother's name. We'll just say Brother John Smith, who passed from this life February 17th, 2020. And whereas the life that made our association with him pleasant is at an end, and the gates of death are closed upon our further intercourse, and whereas by his many ennobling traits of character he hath endeared himself to us, and in his career has left an example to his friends and fellow members, and whereas those manly qualifications which he possessed influence us in a sincere desire to testify to an appreciation of his life amongst us. Be it therefore resolved that the death of Brother John Smith, who was a member of, and that would be where your local Blue Lodge, Free and Accepted Masons, we sincerely deplore the loss of one to whom we had become affectionately attached by long association and by relations which were never marred by the least occurrence of an unfriendly act. And then that is signed by the master, and then the secretary will put the lodge seal on it and present it to the family or mail. Honestly, probably if you're going to do that as a lodge secretary, I would buy a frame and either drive it to the family or mail it as a package to the family. But that's just another way to honor the brother. And then most of the time, a copy of that memoriam would be put in the records of the lodge. But like I said, there's so many different ways of doing it that, you can do that with the family. You can present them with that. But here is the most important thing that you can do. After the brother has been buried, after everything is over, maybe, you may even go by a month and think, okay, we all get back to our normal lives and we don't think about it anymore. But one of the things, like yesterday, that I told the widow of our brother, I told her, I said, remember, our brother, and I'm trying to avoid names here, but although he is gone, you are still a member of our family. You are still part of the Masonic family. And should anything come up, if you need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And of course, she, knowing that, I mean, her husband had been a Mason for almost 70 years. She knew that. But just hearing that, knowing that we still have her back, we still have that, we are obligated to do that. And I think that it is important to reach out to the nearest relative, whether it be the wife or the kids or whoever, and say, listen, you're a member of our Masonic family through him. And should you need anything, reach out to us. Let us know. And I also think it's important to keep the widows in mind. I think it's very important to keep them involved in the different things that we do in the lodge. Say we have a pancake breakfast or an outing of some sort, it should be known to the widows as well, that they are invited. You know, although your husband and our brother may be gone from this earth, you are still a member of our family. So please. Okay, so I think that that pretty much covers everything. I think, let me see. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers everything in the Masonic funeral. Um, Everything you've heard or seen, if you're watching live on Facebook, is nothing compared to actually sitting through a Masonic service. And if I ever make it to the East, if I ever have to put on a Masonic service as the master of the lodge, I just hope that I can make it through it. Because, like I said, our brother that did it last night, he was amazing. I mean, it was incredible. I just think there may have been a hiccup here or there, but you really wouldn't have noticed. It was it was so solemn and sacred and respectful, and I told him that, that I don't it just it's without words to describe it. And I know other people may have different views on a Masonic funeral, but as for me, I don't think, you know, I don't think that you can be a part of something more beautiful and more honorable than that. It's just it's our final goodbye. It's our final goodbye to our brother. It's definitely something to be a part of. If you have not yet been a part of it, I highly suggest it. Okay, well, I think that's going to do it for this podcast. We are about 52 minutes in, and I want to say out there to everyone to um, Wilburn Sargent Jr., what about the silver slipper for the widow? I'm going to be honest with you. I have never seen that. I've heard of it. I've never seen that in our jurisdiction. Um, I honestly, I don't know a lot about it other than I have heard of it, but I can't really answer any questions about that because I've never seen it. So, um, maybe, I mean, you're more than welcome to enlighten me about it or even email me and tell me about it, the Masonic Ring at gmail.com, because I don't know a lot about it, to be honest with you. I should probably research it a little bit more, but, um, I forget what I was saying now. Oh, I know what it was. I wanted to thank everyone out there for hanging in there with me during my hiatus of moving everything. Plus sickness, the flu has been rampant this season, and I don't know if I had the flu or the coronavirus or what I had, but I was pretty sick for a long time. I didn't get out of bed for 3 days, and I'm not exaggerating. Like, I was literally in bed for 3 days. I didn't even get out of bed to use the bathroom. I spent most of the time sleeping, and man, it was rough. It knocked me out. I think that's the sickest I have been in a maybe ever. I don't ever remember being that sick. I mean, it was rough. If it was the flu, it was the worst flu that I've ever had in my life. But anyway, I have not yet come up with what our next episode is going to be. I'm trying to figure out, working on getting a guest on, where I had to be on hiatus for a little bit. I had to kind of put that on the back burner. Um, but we have a guest who is very, very knowledgeable. He's actually a district deputy education officer. Um, and I think that having him on, I'm just some hill jack from Southern Ohio. I don't know everything. Sure, I've been in the lodge for since 2005. So yeah, I have some knowledge, but I don't know everything. And some of the things I say may be wrong. But I think it would be he's going to come on and he's going to talk about appendant bodies um, of masonry, and where I don't have a lot of knowledge in that fact, then I think this is going to be a really good episode. So I want it to be really good for everybody. I want to make sure that it's done correctly and that we are able to get the information out um, that we are able to get the information out to um, properly to everybody. Will Burns says it's a pin the widow should wear when traveling so brothers know she is a widow of a brother if she needs assistance. Man, that is a good idea. I'm going to look more into that. I appreciate that. I'm going to look more into that because that might be something that we should consider. Pin that brothers. That's a good idea. I think that as a way of brothers to see, the problem is I wouldn't know. If I saw the pin right now, I probably wouldn't know. So that's something that maybe we should do as part of an LEO. Check with the jurisdictions, see uh, what they say about it, and then do it as part of an LEO. So, all right, I'm going to end it now. I want to thank everyone out there for watching and hanging in with me on my hiatus. You can go onto Facebook if you're not already, and I'd love to hear any comments, questions, concerns, anything I'm wrong about. Let me know so that I can change it. Because, like I said, um, I am not full authority on the Masons. I'm just doing this as a hobby and hoping to spread a little light of Freemasonry out to the world. So, all right. I want to thank everyone for watching and for hanging in there. And I should be back with another episode next week. You can log on to Facebook and I will keep you updated on that. So I want to. I want to extend a very heartfelt prayer out to the family of the brother that we had to do the funeral service for yesterday, and always say that you will always be in our prayers. And I ask the brothers out there if they will continue to pray for that family as well. Um, Also, we have a brother that is actually in the hospital having his gallbladder removed right now at this very moment. It was kind of an emergency situation. So I am asking all the brothers out there or everyone out there listening to send up a special prayer for him as well. And I will come back with an update on him. I'm sure he's going to do fine because I told him he was too stubborn uh, to lay in bed for too long. So, all right. Thank you all for watching. We'll be back and I'll talk to you next time.